I never expected to get a match like Mia. She was younger than me, stunning, with sharp features and warm eyes that made her smile linger in my mind long after I saw it on the screen. I was just a guy working at a hardware store, leading a quiet, uneventful life. There was nothing remarkable about me. Yet there she was, 23 years old, vibrant, and talking to me like we had known each other forever. Our conversation started simple. We discovered we had grown up in the same city, though somehow we had never crossed paths before. We talked about childhood places, local spots we both remembered, and favorite restaurants that still stood from years ago. The connection felt strange but comforting, as if we were picking up from something long lost. Each new message from her felt like a spark of excitement that I hadn't experienced in years. I ignored the little voice inside that whispered questions. Why would someone like her be interested in me? Why was she so eager to engage, to connect, as if she'd been waiting for someone exactly like me? But that voice was easy to bury under the thrill of it all. After years of dull routine, the attention from Mia felt like a gift I wasn't about to question too much. I don't remember much of the day leading up to our first date, just that I was nervous. I met Mia at a quiet cafe downtown, and seeing her in person was almost surreal. She was even more beautiful than her photos, and her presence seemed to fill the room. She smiled warmly, as if we'd been old friends reunited, and any awkwardness I feared melted away. We talked about everything: travel dreams, books we loved, and stories from growing up in the same city. I felt drawn to her, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, the effortless way she made me feel seen. But something nagged at me. A thin leather bracelet on her wrist. It had a strange, angular symbol etched into it, something I couldn't place. When I asked her about it, she gave me a half smile, running her fingers over it as if out of habit. "Oh, this? It was a gift from my uncle. He passed away last year." Her tone was casual, but there was something final about the way she dismissed the topic, making it clear she didn't want to talk about it further. As we continued talking, a flicker of movement caught my attention. At a table near the corner, a bald man in a leather jacket sat quietly, his eyes flicking toward us now and then. I tried to shake the feeling of being observed, but it clung to me, even as Mia leaned closer, her voice soft and inviting. The man's glances unsettled me, but Mia's presence was magnetic, pulling my focus back to her. After the cafe, Mia invited me to a live show that same night. She seemed excited, and I couldn't resist her energy. I agreed, eager to spend more time with her, even though something about the way she rushed the invitation felt strange. Later that evening, as I left my apartment, I noticed a car parked just down the street. It was an old, beat-up sedan, the kind you see abandoned in parking lots. There was someone inside, a silhouette barely visible through the grimy windows. When I started walking toward the bar, the car's engine sputtered to life, and it slowly rolled past me. I stopped, my heart thudding in my chest as I watched it disappear down the road. A wave of unease washed over me. Was someone watching me, or was I just being paranoid? I shook the thought away. Mia was waiting. I couldn't let my mind ruin the night. The bar was dimly lit and crowded, the low hum of conversation blending with the sound of a band tuning their instruments. Mia greeted me with that same brilliant smile, and for a while everything felt right again. We ordered drinks, and I tried to focus on the music, but I couldn't help scanning the room, my nerves still raw from the strange encounter with the sedan. Then I saw him again, the man from the cafe. He stood near the back of the room, half hidden in the shadows, but his gaze was unmistakable. He was watching me. The same cold, deliberate glances from before, as if he was waiting for something. I told myself it was just a coincidence, but the knot in my stomach tightened. I needed a moment to clear my head, so I stepped away to use the restroom. When I came back, Mia was gone. Her seat was empty. No purse, no drink, no trace that she had ever been there. I searched the room, my pulse quickening, but there was no sign of her. I approached a group of people I recognized as her friends, but when I asked about Mia, they exchanged strange glances, as if they knew something I didn't. I stood outside the bar, feeling adrift, my mind racing with possibilities. As I tried to piece things together, the bald man from the cafe approached me, his face tense with urgency. "Leave now," he said, his voice low and firm. "Stop looking for her. Trust me, you don't want to get involved." His words sent a chill through me, but I wasn't ready to listen. "Who are you? What do you know about Mia?" I demanded, but he just shook his head. Before I could push further, he stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "I need you to understand," he said quietly. "This isn't what you think." He introduced himself as a private investigator. "I was hired by a family," he explained, pulling a worn photograph from his pocket. "Their son went missing after meeting a girl on the same app you used. I've been following her since." I took the photo, and my breath caught. The man in the picture looked eerily like me. Same build, same dark hair, even the same hesitant smile. But what froze me was the background. There beside him stood Mia. Her expression was unreadable, and on her wrist was the same leather bracelet I had seen earlier. The investigator's words hit me like a punch to the gut. Mia's sudden invitations, her vanishing act, the strange behavior of her friends, it all made sense now. Panic surged through me as I realized how close I had come to disappearing like the man in the photo. "Go home," the investigator urged. "Block her. Change your number. Don't look back." I didn't need to be told twice. I raced to my car and drove home, my thoughts swirling with fear and disbelief. Once inside, I locked every door, my hands shaking as I blocked Mia on every app I had. Then I changed my number, packed my things, and arranged to move out within the week. The police dismissed my concerns. Without evidence, there was nothing they could do. I moved on with my life, and from now on, I don't care about dating apps anymore, and I recommend that no one uses this type of app either. The dream of starting over in the United States had kept me awake many nights back home. It was all I could think about, leaving behind the endless struggles, the suffocating monotony, and the hopelessness that clung to everything I touched. I wasn't naive. I knew it wouldn't be easy. But I had convinced myself that if I could just make it to the US, the difficulties would be worth it. I clung to that belief like a drowning man clings to a lifeline. Arriving in the US was like being dropped into a different world. The streets were loud and busy, filled with people moving with purpose. Everything seemed larger, faster, and more indifferent. The apartment I managed to rent was small and barely furnished, but it was mine, and that meant something. Still, every morning I woke to the same crushing weight. This place, this opportunity I had longed for, felt as foreign as ever. I threw myself into work, picking up every shift I could. I knew I had to keep moving, keep working, or the loneliness would eat me alive. Every job I took felt like another brick in the foundation I was trying to build. But even as I tried to adjust to this new world, the isolation clung to me. I didn't have time to make friends, and the cultural differences only widened the gap between me and the people around me. Despite the exhaustion, I kept telling myself it would get better. After all, every immigrant struggles at first, right? It was just a phase. I just needed to give it time. But as the weeks turned into months, the empty apartment and quiet nights began to wear on me. I could handle hard work. I'd done it all my life. But this loneliness was something else entirely. After one particularly long day, I sat in the dim light of my apartment, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. That's when I saw the dating app ad. It promised connections, real, meaningful connections. I hesitated at first. What could I expect from an app? But the thought of coming home to silence every night pushed me to download it. I just wanted someone to talk to, someone who could make this place feel a little less foreign. At first, the app felt overwhelming. So many profiles, so many faces. Everyone seemed so different from me, with lives I couldn't imagine fitting into. I swiped left more often than right, thinking maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Then her profile appeared. Her smile was kind, her eyes warm, and her bio simple. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just herself, or at least, that's how it seemed. I swiped right, and to my surprise, it was an instant match. Our first conversation was easy, flowing without effort. She was curious about my life, but not intrusive. For the first time in a long while, I felt comfortable talking to someone. There was no need to explain myself or pretend to be something I wasn't. We chatted every day after that, and the conversations quickly became the highlight of my routine. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt since I arrived. It wasn't long before we decided to meet in person. We met at a quiet park on a warm afternoon. I was nervous. What if the connection we had online didn't translate in real life? But the moment I saw her, all my worries melted away. She smiled, waved, and hugged me like we were old friends meeting after years apart. We spent the afternoon walking through the park, talking about everything and nothing. It felt so natural, like we had known each other for longer than just a few weeks. She was funny, insightful, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Over the next few weeks, we explored the city together. From little cafes hidden in alleyways to bustling markets filled with vibrant colors and sounds, it felt like we were discovering the city hand in hand. For the first time since arriving, I felt like I belonged. She was my anchor in this chaotic new world, and I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were finally falling into place. It started subtly, a sharp comment here, an odd mood swing there. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone has bad days, I told myself. It wasn't a big deal. But the small things began piling up, and the atmosphere between us shifted. One day she snapped at me over something trivial. It was so out of character that I didn't know how to react. I apologized, even though I wasn't sure what I had done wrong, and she quickly moved on as if nothing had happened. But from that moment on, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. The arguments became more frequent and her moods more unpredictable. One day she was affectionate, the next cold and distant. I tried to address the tension between us, but every conversation seemed to escalate into a fight. It was exhausting, and I began to wonder if I had made a mistake in trusting her. The relationship that once felt like a refuge now felt like a burden. I found myself dreading our time together, never knowing what version of her I would encounter. The emotional highs and lows left me drained, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. Part of me was afraid of what would happen if I tried to walk away. What if she reacted badly? What if I made things worse? I told myself it would get better, that this was just a rough patch. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was trapped, caught between fear and hope, unable to move in any direction. The breaking point came on a night that started like any other. We had argued earlier, but I thought things had calmed down. Exhausted, I fell asleep, hoping tomorrow would be better. But in the middle of the night, I woke to a crushing weight on my chest. Her hands were around my throat, her face twisted with rage. Panic surged through me as I fought to free myself. My mind raced. How had it come to this? I used every ounce of strength I had to push her off and scrambled out of the bed, gasping for air. I ran from the house without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. Blood seeped from scratches on my arms and neck, but I didn't stop. I just kept running until I reached the street, where I collapsed, breathless and terrified. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and police reports. The authorities took my statement, and as they dug into her past, the truth came to light. She had been arrested before, for attempting to harm someone else in a similar situation. Hearing the details made my stomach turn. How had I been so blind? How had I let myself get so close to someone capable of such violence? She was taken into custody, and just like that, the nightmare was over. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest I've ever endured. Recovery wasn't just about healing the physical wounds. It was about rebuilding my sense of safety, my trust in people, and my hope for the future. But I refused to let this experience define me. I had come to the U.S. with dreams of a better life, and I wasn't going to let this setback derail those dreams. Slowly, I began to rebuild, piece by piece, day by day. The scars on my body would fade with time, but the lessons I had learned would stay with me. I knew I had been lucky to escape, lucky to survive. And as I moved forward, I held on to the hope that had brought me here in the first place. Better days were still ahead, and I was determined to find them. I didn't mind the quiet. It suited me. The animals needed me, the land demanded work, and there was a kind of peace in that. No unnecessary conversations, no crowded places, just me, the fields, and the rhythm of seasons passing. But every now and then, that silence turned into something else. Loneliness, maybe. I hated admitting it, even to myself. It was one of those nights when the silence felt heavier than usual that I downloaded the dating app. I didn't expect much. It was more curiosity than anything, a way to distract myself. and then I matched with Lena. She said she'd recently moved to the neighboring town, looking for a fresh start. From the moment we started chatting, it was easy. We talked about everything: farming, food, places we'd traveled, things we wanted to do. For the first time in years, I felt that small flicker of excitement, a spark of something I thought had long since burned out. When I told Matt about Lena, I expected him to laugh or call me crazy for using a dating app. Instead, he grinned. "Good for you, Ben," he said. "You've been on your own long enough." Matt was a good guy, always looking out for me. Younger, livelier, the kind of person who could make friends anywhere. "Why don't you meet her?" Matt asked. "See where it goes." So I agreed. We arranged to meet at the farmer's market, public enough to feel safe but still personal. I was nervous heading into town, wondering if I'd made a mistake. But the moment I saw her, my doubts disappeared. Lena was exactly how she'd seemed online, friendly, easygoing, with a laugh that made me forget how much I hated small talk. By the time we parted ways, I was smiling like a fool. Before she left, we made plans for a second date, this time at my farm. I wanted to show her my world, to see if she could understand it. The day Lena was supposed to come over, I spent hours making sure the house was in order. I hadn't had company in years, not like this. I even cooked, dusted off an old family recipe for roast chicken and vegetables. The nervous energy kept me moving until my phone buzzed. It was a message from Matt. "Be careful with Lena. I saw her with someone else in town. Something feels off." The words sat heavy in my mind, but I tried to push them aside. Matt was protective, always looking out for me. Maybe he was just overreacting. Lena didn't seem the type to play games, and I wasn't going to cancel our date over one strange message. When she arrived, her smile was warm, and for a while it felt good, natural. We ate, talked, and everything felt easy again. But then, Lena started asking questions that made me pause. "How far is your nearest neighbor?" she asked, her tone light. "Must be peaceful out here, all on your own." I tried to brush it off, but the way she phrased it made me uneasy. She asked about the property lines, the distance between farms, and whether anyone ever dropped by unexpectedly. They were odd questions, though she made them sound casual. But something about it all felt wrong. By the time Lena left, that unease was gnawing at me. Her questions had stuck in my mind, and Matt's warning suddenly didn't feel so out of place. After she drove off, I sat by the window, replaying every conversation, every detail of the evening. I tried calling Matt again, but no answer. I sent another message, "Everything okay? I need to talk to you," and waited, hoping for a reply. But nothing came. The next day, I tried calling again, still no answer. That pit of worry in my stomach grew heavier. It wasn't like Matt to ignore me, not after a message like that. But without any way to reach him, I was stuck in limbo, my thoughts running in circles. Then that night, Lena messaged again. "Can I come over tomorrow night? I'd really like to see you again." I stared at the screen, my gut telling me something wasn't right. But I agreed. I had to know what was going on, and the only way to find out was to let her come back. Lena arrived just after dark. I'd kept myself busy all day, working harder than usual to keep my mind from spiraling. But now, with her standing on my porch, the unease returned full force. We sat in the living room, wine glasses in hand, and for a while everything seemed normal, too normal. I tried to act natural, but I was on edge, waiting for her to slip up, to reveal whatever it was she was hiding. Then she excused herself to take a phone call, stepping out onto the porch. I followed quietly, pressing my ear against the door, my heart racing. "We need to act fast," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "He's starting to get suspicious. I don't know how much longer I can keep him here." My stomach dropped. I stepped away from the door, my hands shaking. Lena wasn't who she claimed to be, and she wasn't alone. I locked the door, sliding the bolt into place with trembling hands. Lena tugged at the handle, her voice sweet and calm. "Ben, what's going on? Open the door." I didn't answer. My hands were already dialing the police, my breath shallow and quick. "There's someone here," I whispered into the phone, "and I think my friend's missing." As I waited for the officers to arrive, Lena stood on the porch, her expression shifting from confusion to something darker, something cold. Her phone was in her hand, and minutes later, headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. A car rolled up slowly. Lena gave the driver a nod, then turned back to the door. She mouthed the words, "You should have let me in," before climbing into the car and driving away. When the police showed up, the house was quiet again, but the tension in the air remained thick. I explained everything: the messages from Matt, Lena's odd behavior, and the phone call I'd overheard. The officers searched Matt's place but found nothing. No sign of foul play, no indication that anything was wrong. "You sure he didn't just leave town for a bit?" one officer asked. I shook my head. Matt wouldn't disappear without telling me. Something's not right. The next morning, the police got back to me. They'd managed to contact one of Matt's cousins, who explained that Matt had gone to help his grandmother on a remote farm. No cell service, no way to reach him. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The questions about Lena lingered, unanswered and unsettling. Who had she been talking to? And what had they been planning? Life slowly returned to normal, but the experience left a mark on me. Something subtle, but permanent. The farm felt different now, quieter in a way I couldn't quite explain. I deleted the dating app, deciding that the quiet life was enough for me. Some risks just weren't worth taking. And as I stood at the edge of my property, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever Lena had been after, she was gone now. But I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't letting anyone else through that door. Not again. It was the kind of night made for staying indoors. Rain hammered relentlessly against the windows of my apartment, and the sound of thunder rolled lazily in the distance. I found comfort in the quiet, content with the solitude that usually accompanied my evenings. To pass the time, I pulled up Spark, a dating app I had joined on a whim, half hoping to stumble across someone interesting. I was about to put my phone away when a notification popped up. Lila had matched with me. She was beautiful, with a casual charm in her photos, and I couldn't help but be intrigued. I tapped on her profile and sent a message, not really expecting much. To my surprise, she responded immediately. Our conversation flowed naturally. She was witty and had a way of making me feel at ease. We talked about books, movies, and music, the kind of surface-level things you chat about with strangers. But the way she responded made it feel different, like she really got me. I couldn't tell if it was the rain outside or Lila's easy charm, but I felt more connected than I had in a long time. It was only when the conversation took a strange turn that the unease started to creep in. Lila began mentioning things about my apartment, little details no one could have known. "I bet your couch is facing the TV, right?" she had typed. I brushed it off as a lucky guess. But then she mentioned the painting above my bookshelf, something I hadn't posted online. "How do you know that?" I typed back, my heart picking up pace. Her response was unsettling. "I told you, Ethan, I know more than you think." A knot formed in my stomach. When she said she was coming over, my hands shook as I typed a response. "Wait, what? You can't come here." The app froze. My screen went black for a second, then flickered back to life. When it did, her messages started flooding in. "I'm on my way. Almost there. See you soon." I tried to block her, but the app wouldn't respond. Each new notification sent a jolt of fear through me. I locked my phone and took a deep breath, but the pounding of rain against the windows made everything feel claustrophobic, as if the walls were closing in around me. I stood by the window, watching the rain stream down the glass in torrents. The streetlights flickered in the storm, casting eerie reflections. Then I saw it, a figure slowly making its way toward my building. The rain blurred the details, but I could make out the deliberate steps. When I stepped back from the window, I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. People walk in the rain all the time, right? But something about the figure's pace sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't hurried, as if they had no intention of avoiding the downpour. It was deliberate, like they knew exactly where they were going. I rushed to the front door and locked it, twisting the deadbolt for good measure. I stood there, my ear pressed against the cold surface of the door, hoping the sound of footsteps wouldn't follow. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a soft knock. The knock was gentle, almost polite, as if whoever was outside was trying to put me at ease. But it didn't. My heart raced as I checked my phone. A new notification waited for me. I tapped it with trembling fingers, and the photo opened. It was taken from outside my apartment door. My breath caught as I stared at the image, the same view I was looking at now, except from the other side. Another message followed. "Open the door, Ethan. I've been waiting for this." My hands trembled as I set the phone down. The rain pounded harder against the windows, but it was the sound of that knock, soft, persistent, that filled the apartment. I felt the walls close in further, isolating me from everything and everyone. The storm outside felt like a barrier, cutting me off from the world. I checked my phone again, and the notifications were relentless. One after another, the same message: "Leela is typing." Each buzz of my phone sent another wave of fear through me. I knew I had to act. I dragged the couch across the room, wedging it against the door. I piled chairs on top of it, creating a barricade as the knocks grew louder, more insistent. My hands were clammy, and every breath felt heavier than the last. I was alone. No neighbors, no friends, just me, the rain, and whatever waited on the other side of the door. With shaking hands, I dialed the police. The operator's voice was calm, but I could barely hear it over the pounding rain. "There's someone outside my apartment," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "They know things about me. They're trying to get in." "We've got officers on the way," the operator assured me. "Stay on the line with me." The knocks were deafening now, like fists slamming against the wood. I pressed my back against the barricade, praying the door would hold. The minutes stretched endlessly, each knock like a countdown to disaster. Just when I thought I couldn't hold out any longer, the knocking stopped. I heard the faint sounds of shuffling, but I stayed frozen in place, afraid to move. Then, out of nowhere, voices shouted from the hallway. The police had arrived. I heard scuffles, shouts, and the unmistakable sound of handcuffs being clicked into place. They had taken the intruders by surprise, the torrential rain masking their arrival. When an officer knocked on the door, identifying himself, I nearly collapsed in relief. I unblocked the door and let them in, my legs weak from the adrenaline. 2 men were taken into custody, one of them armed, both soaked to the bone. As the police questioned me, I realized how close I had come to something unthinkable. They told me the 2 men had been stalking online dating apps, targeting vulnerable people like me. One of them had been the one messaging me as Lila. I sat on the couch, exhausted but grateful. The storm outside still raged, but the weight pressing on my chest slowly began to lift. I didn't know what I would have done if the police hadn't arrived in time. After my breakup, Luke wouldn't stop pestering me to get on a dating app. "Everyone does it," he said. "It's the easiest way to get back out there." But the idea made me uncomfortable. I wasn't ready for hookups or random conversations with strangers, especially after being in a relationship for so long. Luke laughed it off, saying I was overthinking it. With a bit of hesitation, I downloaded the app late one night. Scrolling through profiles felt bizarre, like stepping into a marketplace of people. Most conversations were shallow and fizzled out after a few lines. I couldn't tell if it was me or if everyone just treated this as a game. I kept swiping, telling myself it was just for fun, but deep down, I was hoping for something genuine. Then I matched with Claire. She wasn't like the others. Her profile wasn't loaded with fake-sounding quotes or forced selfies. A veterinary assistant with a gentle smile, she seemed real. The first conversation with Claire felt refreshing. We didn't waste time with surface-level chatter. No "hey, how's it going?" or awkward small talk. She asked thoughtful questions and listened to my answers, and I found myself doing the same. Before I knew it, we were talking about everything from pets to our favorite places to visit. It was the first time in a while I felt a connection that wasn't forced. I told myself not to get carried away, but it was hard not to look forward to her messages. I started checking my phone more often, waiting for the little notification that would make my day. Luke, of course, wasn't impressed. "Don't put too much stock in it," he warned. "It's just an app. Nothing serious ever comes from it." But I didn't care. I wanted to meet her, to see if what we had online would feel just as real in person. So I suggested dinner. When she said yes, it felt like a win, like maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. And then she disappeared. No explanation, no warning, just silence. Her messages stopped, and the playful energy between us vanished as if it had never existed. At first, I told myself not to overreact. People get busy, I thought. Life happens. But as the hours turned into days, I couldn't ignore the gnawing sense of doubt. What if I'd said something wrong? Did I come on too strong? I replayed every conversation in my mind, trying to spot the moment where things went off track. But everything had felt right, or so I thought. 3 days later, just when I was ready to give up, I got a message from Claire. It wasn't the cheerful reply I'd hoped for. Instead, it was something much stranger. If we meet, please don't tell anyone. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. What did that even mean? I asked her to explain, but she never responded. The message sat there, unresolved and unsettling, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Luke's response was predictable. You're overthinking this. People on these apps act weird all the time. He waved it off, telling me to forget about her and move on. But I couldn't. There was something about her sudden disappearance and that cryptic message that I couldn't let go of. I tried messaging her again, but the silence on the other end was suffocating. The more she ignored me, the more obsessed I became. I went back to her profile, scanning every detail as if I'd missed something important. Was there a hidden meaning somewhere in our conversations? A clue I hadn't noticed? The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous. But instead of pulling back, I leaned in. I had to know what was really going on with Claire, even if it meant venturing into uncomfortable territory. Despite everything, I went to the restaurant on the night we had planned. I knew there was a good chance she wouldn't show, but part of me hoped for a miracle. I arrived early, choosing a table near the door so I could see her walk in. I ordered a drink and kept checking my phone, willing it to buzz with a message from her. An hour passed, then another. I told myself to leave, but I couldn't. Something held me there, a stubborn hope that she'd walk in at the last second, laughing and apologizing for being late. But she never did. I eventually paid my tab and drove home, feeling foolish for thinking this would be any different from the other failed connections. Luke was right. This was just how things went on these apps. But even as I told myself that, I knew there was more to it. Something didn't add up. Back at home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something bad. I started searching online, digging through forums and social media groups dedicated to dating app experiences. That's when I found the post. A man described meeting someone named Claire through the same app. She had invited him to her apartment, but when he arrived, he was ambushed by two men who robbed him at gunpoint. The details matched too closely to be a coincidence. The same Claire, the same pattern. My stomach turned. This wasn't just ghosting or flakiness. Claire was part of a scam, and I had almost been her next victim. The realization hit me hard. I had been walking into a trap without even knowing it. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious Luke's behavior seemed. Why had he been so quick to dismiss Claire's strange actions? Why was he so certain it was nothing? I confronted him the next day. At first, he played dumb, acting like I was being paranoid. But when I kept pushing, his defenses crumbled. He admitted everything. Claire was part of a network of scammers, and Luke had been working with them. He had given them information about me, about others, and in return, he got a cut of whatever they made. I felt sick. The person I had trusted most had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I told him we were done. As I walked away, I knew I would never see him the same way again. I deleted the app that night, disgusted by everything it represented. I don't use dating apps anymore. I tell myself it's for the best, that I've learned my lesson.